Hello gainers, welcome to my channel called Fitter Philosophy. I am the host, Ralphie, and this is my little channel. It's been running for a few years now and it's not terribly big, but frankly I don't care because it's become quite a useful little opportunity in my life to document it. Within reason, of course. We should never tell everybody everything all the time about ourselves. And the reason is for our own sanity. It's as simple as that. But I really enjoy presenting the content because I've got to think it through and develop it and then present it. And in doing so, it establishes a discipline, one of many disciplines, and it's the discipline of cleaning your house, obviously, of learning more, of managing finances, of eating healthily, a balanced diet, of nutritious food. You know, these are all disciplines, and the more disciplined we are in life, frankly, the more we engage, the more we connect, and the more we get out of life. And one of my little disciplines that I thought when I was young would be absolutely impossible, but I've made it happen, is writing books. I remember at school in the English class, the irony that very few of my contemporaries in the class at the time bothered to read books. Sure, they would read comics, but they wouldn't read books. And I was probably one of the most avid book readers in the classroom at school. And it covered everything from Tolkien, of course, C.S. Lewis, all the kind of British staple classics. And it's when I was reading them that I discovered that, particularly in children's books, there's so much more going on than one realises from adaptations to films. The books go far, far deeper, and the successful writers like J.M. Barrie, for example, who wrote Peter Pan, when you read Peter Pan as an adult, the psychology of it and the double meanings and the layers are absolutely phenomenal. And you can see in many respects why they have become a classic. Read. Of course, there's other books out there that they don't become classics, but they're still really well written books with interesting and eventful stories. And I sometimes wonder why it is that, you know, what makes a classic? Is it, as I believe it is, pure luck? I'll give you one example of that is George Orwell. George Orwell is quite a difficult writer to read, particularly 1984. The thing is, when you're reading that book, and it's essential reading, absolutely essential, and this is why it is the classic that it was never supposed to be. If the authorities had had their way, it would disappear, but it was too late, and it has become inseparable from the modern consciousness. And this is probably one reason why in parts of the world they are still banning George Orwell's book 1984. I mean, funnily enough, they don't seem to be concerned about Down and Out in Paris, which is another of his books. And Animal Farm seems to get off with it because it's just a children's book and is perceived. So I really see the mind and the mindset and the way that the censors are thinking when they try and obliterate 1984 as a stand-alone piece of literature. And even as they do so, they endorse it and they make it more valuable and more important. They make it more essential reading. Of course, I'm not quite so ambitious. I have a much more modest agenda here as a writer, because despite the fact that I was one of the most avid readers in the class, I just couldn't get my head around adjectives, pronouns, adjunctives, and all the components of English literature. In fact, I still can't. But I was always fairly clear and concise at speaking English, despite the fact that I'm not English, I'm Scottish. But English is the Scottish language, end of. And there's a lot of advantages to that. But I was advised by my teacher at school, and this is advice to all you writers out there, because everybody has a book in them. I was advised by my teacher that I shouldn't worry too much about failing English, because if I just go around the factories, I can maybe get a job driving a forklift truck. And in hindsight, that was really good advice, because driving a forklift truck is a responsible and skilled job, which requires manual dexterity and requires real sticking power. It's not terribly well rewarded, as many essential jobs are. They're not terribly well rewarded, whilst superlative, unnecessary occupations get handsomely rewarded. This is part of the absurdity of the human condition. But anyway, I've now at this stage, years later, where I've written 3 books, and in my next forthcoming videos, I'm going to introduce the 3 books to you. There's Search for a Whiskey Bothy, there is Stories from a Whiskey Bar, and there is Life, Death and Whiskey. And considering that I failed English at school, and when I went to write the first book, there was no way a publisher would even look at me. No chance. It never got in my way. In fact, it gave me an advantage. And that is when you see the component, that's about 130, no, it's about 180. We're coming up to 200,000 words here, actually, between these 3 books. And I'm about to publish a 4th book, which I'll introduce to you as well. But I just want to conclude this video at the moment, before I introduce these 3 books individually. I just want to reassure you that if you have a book in you, go ahead and write it. Because where status and opportunity were very much preeminent in whether you were able to get published historically, it's not an obstacle now due to technology. And this is where I acknowledge and have to say thanks to Amazon, because self-publishing in Amazon is a phenomenal opportunity, despite the fact that Amazon is an exploitative behemoth and it is a corporation. But let's take a reality check here. Every single government in the world that regulates the human condition is a corporation. End of. Let's take a reality check here. So I really appreciate that opportunity, because I did approach a book agent, several book agents, and they weren't interested. And so at that point, I thought there's no point even approaching a publisher, because it doesn't take you long online to see how publishers work. They have their, and it's not a criticism, it's an observation, they have their way of working. And if you're an unknown writer, you're going nowhere. Your opportunity is basically the luck of the draw. And the luck of the draw comes from, frankly, a very loaded dice. And we've got to understand that. The one big advantage, huge advantage, that a self-publishing writer can have is developing their own audience. And this means that the modern writer is as much a blogger and vlogger online as they are someone who deposits words onto a page. Because a big advantage I had is I have a relatively small whiskey channel, had over 180,000 subscribers, and with only 10% of my subscribers bothering to buy the book and enjoying the book, I've had really good book sales. My feedback rating in terms of 0 to 5 stars in feedback has been exceptional, as within my expectations. I'm absolutely delighted. Almost 5-star for every book I've published. Some of them are 5 stars. And this has become an ongoing opportunity. Opportunities don't just happen. Opportunity is like a snowball. You've got to scrunch the snow together. You've got to wrap it up in other snow. Then you've got to roll it around a bit before you let it go and let gravity make it larger and faster and more powerful. That's the way opportunity works. Opportunity needs a helping hand. And my final conclusion is that when you're self-published, as a writer, you are completely in control of your own product. You do not have someone editing and taking legal control of your book, so long as you use your own international book standard number, which you can buy from a company online called Nielsen.com. That's if you're in Britain. So do your research. If you allow Amazon to put their own IBSN number, which is always the point at which legal ownership of the book as property is established, then they control it, not you. So always have your own IBSN number, International Book Standard Number. That is important, and make sure at the beginning of your book you have a suitable and sweeping disclaimer in case anyone tries to sue you for libel or defamation or for anything else of perceived hurty feelings. See you in the next video, where I will introduce search for a whiskey bothy.